Okay, guys, it's about to start. Okay, guys, it's about to... Good evening. Good evening. My name is Dr. Chalice Rhodes. Welcome to Talk the Wellness Tea with Dr. Chalice. I'm a licensed professional counselor, board certified telemental health counselor, cancer oncology behavioral health specialist, national certified counselor, clinical trauma counselor, and Christian counselor. Welcome to our clinical trials discussion. We are so excited about tonight. We have our panelists of experts that are going to share their expertise and are going to share their experience. And we are just so very excited for this discussion. All right, so I am going to start off by introducing our panelists, okay? So we have, and thank you all that are joining in with us and joining in on this live conversation. Each panelist is going to share their expertise and their experience, and then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end. So please feel free to type your questions and your answers in the chat. All right, so first I'm going to introduce Haley Brown. Hi, Haley. We see that you're logged in. There she goes. It's so great to see you, Haley. We welcome Haley from Touch the Breast Cancer Alliance, and she is the Director of Partnership and Programs, and Haley is going to share the research trial initiatives of her organization. And then we have Terea Huston. She is a research assistant at the Center for Measurement Justice. She is an ovarian cancer survivor and a doctoral student. And then we have Jackie Scipio Bannerman. She is a Penn Medicine nurse, certified ambulatory women's health, and she is also a doctoral candidate. And last but not least, we have Nafis Norris, who is a scientist, a biopharmaceutical process engineer, and he is the CEO and founder of Nafis Innovations. So welcome, panelists. We are going to start with Haley. Please share a little bit about yourself, Haley, and share some of your initiatives that contribute to the clinical research trials.
Totally. Thank you, Dr. Chalice. And I'm so sorry that I saw you so briefly the other weekend, but I was happy to see you.
Yes, it was so nice. I forgot to say that, Haley. Haley and I actually met, was it last week, Haley, or 2 weeks ago?
Literally, who even knows? October's been crazy.
Yes, this month is so crazy for breast cancer awareness, but we actually met at Dr. Nia Bailey and Jess Jones Stand Up for Breast Cancer, a Letter to My Sister's documentary that was held at the Philadelphia Art Museum. So that was so awesome to briefly meet you, Haley.
No, thank you. I was so glad to put a name to a face. It's always easier to do this work when you get to see the people. These day and age, you don't see people anymore. So it's so nice when you do. But yes, my name is Haley Brown. I'm the Director of Programs and Partnerships of Touch the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, as you stated. And I'm really happy to be here with you guys today to kind of dive into the work that was really going on before I joined the team full on. So I'll just give you some background information. And I am blessed to say that I'm not a cancer survivor, just been on many a support care team. And so that is kind of the place that I come from in this work, and wanted to name that first. But Touch was founded by my mother. Her name is Ricky Fairley. She, yes, and she's I'm her biggest cheerleader over here. And pretty much have been doing advocacy work with her by her side since her diagnosis. And then last year decided she was going to pay me for it. So came on the team full time. But so she was diagnosed with triple negative breast cancer when I was 19 years old. Again, for those of you who don't know the subtypes, triple negative is the one that doesn't have drugs to prevent recurrence. It has least amount of science developed at this point. And so it's just a harder one to treat. It's also very fast moving. And really that triple negative means, breast cancer cells have hormone receptors. And triple negative means that there are no hormone receptors. So that you're shooting from the hip a little bit with these drugs. And so I'm blessed to have my mom still here with me today. She was told that she had 2 years to live 12 years ago. And so we celebrate her life every day. I mean, and if you met her, I would just stop for a second because this is her in this picture. But like, she chooses life every day so hard. But really, Touch was founded upon when she was doing research and trying to figure out how to solve this disease, because I was in college and she was like, no way am I stopping like to do all my mom things that I have to do, because she has a lot of mom to give. And she went online and just found, you're going to die, get your affairs in order. You got 5 years max with this disease state. And no research on triple negative, right? And so especially research on triple negative in Black women. She found the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation on the 3rd page of Google, which is crazy. Thank God that she had the internet bandwidth to get to the 3rd page of Google, right? Like, there's so many things that come up in just in that moment of trying to find treatment. And she just noticed, like, one, that Black breast cancer is looking really different. And that's why we have very much, we only work in Black breast cancer and Black breast health. Again, there are many other organizations working on other people's breast health. So let's focus on ours. And I can tell you kind of why we do that. But Touch was founded because she wanted to create a space where Black women can get online and say, oh, here are resources. Here are the drugs you should be taking. Here are people that look like you in the same predicament, right? And how important it is to find someone that looks like you and you can relate to, have similar experiences in this work and in this moment of, this scary moment of like not feeling hopeful. And like, here we are to say, no, there's plenty of hope. Again, look at my mother, like she right there, that in there, you can see it. So she started to really dig into a couple of different things. One, we've learned now that the Black breast cancer cell, there's proven studies to say that it looks different than a white breast cancer cell, right? And so we think about the fact that there's been a 3% representation of Black women in clinical trials. And we think then, so none of these drugs that are created right now, we know work on us, right? That's what you get from the hearing that. And then you think about our 41% higher mortality rate, our 39% higher recurrence rate. Black women under 35 are getting breast cancer at 2 times the rate of white women and dying at 3 times the rate. Those are just like 3 of the many statistics that point to this being Black breast cancer and Black breast health. And we had to tell, my mom's the first one to go to pharma and say like, hey, your baby's ugly. You need to make me a new one because your drugs aren't working for me. She is here with us based off of experimental drugs as well. And so we do a lot of work to kind of reframe what a clinical trial is in the Black community, right? Because that earned medical mistrust is very, very real. And I can speak to that a little bit more later, the things that I've learned about it, because I've come to learn some interesting things about being asked, not being asked, doctors afraid to ask because then they're going to lose the trust they've gained. There's some weird things going on there, but also, the history of Black people and, essentially, clinical trials being a little hocus pocus. I got that from one of our videos. She calls it a little hocus pocus moment, and us not knowing if we could be a part of those experiences or in a way that like actually advanced science. And so, but the good news is, there are so many regulations in clinical trials now. There are so many different things that make them accessible for Black women. There is no placebo. There's no sugar pill in breast cancer research, right? You are going to get standard of care, which is, again, those tested drugs that we know only have 3% representation, right? And so this new thing that they're trying, which might be, a deviation of standard of care, might be the best thing because we're not proven that the other thing is going to work. And so it's interesting when you think about it, because it's like, no wonder, like I have to involve myself in the science. I have to make sure that Black women like myself can continue to fight this disease and my children can continue to fight the disease. And we're creating systems where Black people feel safe enough to do this. Because it is a risk, right? I'm not like, it's hard. Like, it's not like, it's a big deal to say, I'm just going to give my body science. You know what I mean? I'm just going to like,
yes.
But the reality of it is truly that, Black women we need this science. And my mom says like, you're willing to buy the newest iPhone. you're willing to invest in the best technology. So why wouldn't you do that for your body?
Yes.
Right. And so when I'm like, oh, well, yeah, duh. It's like, of course I want to be in the best thing. And so we do a lot of work to dispel some of the myths around clinical trial work, because it's there are myths at this point, and I'm happy that there are myths, and I'm happy that we can share this information. And so at this point, our When We Trial campaign, and please feel free to go to our website, check out our videos. We have lots of videos of breasties talking to breasties. That's so important to hear from voices of trust. Right. It's like, you don't need, no one needs to hear from me. I'm not a survivor. You want to hear from someone who has a similar experience, looks like you, been through it with you, has the same amount of kids. There's little things that make you be able to relate, the location, whatever. And again, we pride ourselves on giving video content and sharing stories in this way, because it's, you got to hear from someone who looks like you. But we've now signed up over 13,000 women into clinical trial portals, Black women. That does not mean they're in clinical trials, right? There are so many other steps to actually get into the clinical trials. Again, that location, disease type, all of those things, whether or not you're eligible. But it does mean that we've changed over 13,000 Black women's minds about this process. And we know that after that mindset switch, then comes that behavior change. And so we're really working to just get that together.
Wow, your organization is doing such phenomenal work. And that must have been so scary for you, Haley. Well, you said you were 17 or 19.
I was 19, I was in college, and it was this moment of like, yeah, like my mom is my everything. What am I going to do? And I feel like so many people, well, that's the thing, is this disease is a family disease in this way, right? It affects every person that you touch. You know what I mean? Like, and my mom touches so many.
Yeah.
So it affected everyone she touched. But yeah, and I think at Touch too, we're not over here like sugarcoating things. Like, no, let's talk about the parts that suck. Let's talk about the parts that are real. We have, all of we have Touch Talk and TNBC Talk, a space for these Black women to come and talk about like what it feels like to have your daughter lay on your chest and your boobs are removed. Like that moment alone can be a game changer. And so just like the realness behind it. And for example, like my mom was sick and she was like not a wig lady. So we built a hat collection, right? And just like taking these things that like they do suck and acknowledging they suck, but also making them fun. And so that's kind of how we dealt with it at the time.
Yeah, you're so right about it being a family disease, because even for your mom to have to share with her daughters that, she had this disease, and, the prognosis for TNBC and what she read on the internet, so it's difficult on both ends. But we're so happy that your mom is still here all of these years later, and Touch is making this global impact in all of the work that you do, and all of the initiatives and the spaces and the places that you guys are going and have gone and have been invited to. It's just such a blessing to have you as a part.
I know my mom actually is speaking with Jill Biden today. And so we're very, very excited for her. We were in Biden's fact sheet this year as well. Again, just really trying to make a big impact. And yeah, let's go big or go home over here, because Black women are dying and that's unacceptable.
Yes. Oh my God, Haley, thank you so much for sharing. I'm sure there may be questions for you later. All right, so we are going to move on to Taraya Huston. All right, Taraya, I'm so excited to hear you talk and to share your experience, your research experience. Taraya is a fellow cancer survivor, an ovarian cancer survivor. But Taraya, you take it from here. I'm going to let you share your story and expertise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Chalice, for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And Haley, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story and your work. And a lot of what I will be talking about will dovetail really nicely with what you've been talking about. So I was actually 17 when I was diagnosed with a malignant ovarian tumor. And what happened was I had been gaining some weight, but typical teenager on a standard American diet. I had been hitting the fries and the wings and all of the good food, and thought I was just gaining a little weight. But then I started having these pains in my stomach. And so I went to the emergency room when the pain got unbearable. My mom took me, and instantly, they looked at my stomach and they said, "Oh, well, obviously pregnant, and I was not a sexually active teenager. So there was no way I could be pregnant, but I was really gaslit the entire time I was in the emergency room. You are absolutely pregnant. You are lying to us. It gave me a urine pregnancy test, did not do a blood test. And we found out later that the sample was contaminated. So it did come back that my HCG levels were high. And they told me, you are absolutely pregnant. Your pregnancy test says that you're pregnant. I go to the ultrasound room. The ultrasound technician asks me name, age, and what number child is this? We spent the entire day in the hospital, and finally an OBGYN came down and after my mom, kind of turned the hospital out. And she said, we've got to do more tests. So they found this tumor that was the size of a regulation football. It was about 5 pounds. It was called a malignant teratoma. And so, through this experience, I really learned what it was like to be medically gaslit at a very, very young age. I grew up very quickly, not only from the disease, but how the healthcare system treated me. And
Yes.
so throughout my entire career, as I kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do, I always kind of held that experience close to my chest. Because I knew it was because I was a Black woman, right? I knew it was because I was a Black teenager, and that was what was expected of me. And, just going through life, I just never wanted anyone to have that same experience. So fast forward, I started my career. I worked in health and human services for a little bit. I worked for a breast cancer organization where I did focus groups with women and talked about their experience, much like Haley was saying, and how their experiences were so much different than others. And then I decided to go to graduate school because I was really fascinated at the impact of the emotional and physical impact of this type of discrimination that has on our bodies, and can have a cyclical effect and keep us from healing effectively, right? Because we're focusing on this discrimination. It can cause chronic stress and trauma, and we're not even addressing it, right? So when I have that microaggressive experience, when I have that medical gaslighting experience, it's not something that I talk about. It's not something I bring up really much in therapy, and didn't even really have a framework for what was happening to me until I started getting into the literature. So my work now focuses on the emotional and physical impacts of identity-based rejection and discrimination, and the way that the stages of these microaggressive incidents, and that can go all the way up to traumatic incidents surrounding race and gender and differing abilities, can cause chronic stress the same way things like abuse can.
Yes.
And so we're carrying those burdens, and we're trying to prevent disease, and we're trying to heal as Black women. And yet we're carrying these heavy burdens, and we're the matriarchs, right? And we have so much to do. And a lot of this trauma that we carry, and these burdens that we carry, can also be epigenetic, right? So they can go back from all the way back to slavery. One of the things that I was talking to DrChalice about is the way that Black women don't get enough sleep. We do not get enough sleep. We don't have good sleep hygiene. And that goes back to slavery, right? Where we had to work in the fields alongside our partners. We had to come back, care for our children, cook the meals. And then that's when the education happened, right? So between 12 a.m. and 3 a.m., that's when I was getting my literacy lesson. That's when I was guarding the door to make sure that my children learned how to read and write, right? So they could have a different life. And these things don't go away. These are passed down overtly through DNA from generation to generation. And so one of the things that I think is so important is that we address the lack of sleep, we address the self-care, we address and the hormone levels, right? So Haley discussed hormones. And one of the things I also look at is, those high cortisol and high adrenal adrenaline levels, they can cause so many health impacts, right? And so again, as we're thinking about healing our bodies, we're thinking about regeneration, and we're thinking about what the cells need and what the body needs. We need rest, and we need to, get those stress hormones down. So I think it's really, really important that, we also talk about, as we're going through treatment, as we're navigating, any kind of disease, that we're also talking about what we go through every day as Black women, and how stressful and traumatic that can be. And the fear and the uncertainty that comes with, some of these discrimination incidents that we deal with every day. It's really important that we start to address these. One of the things that I thought was great was that Haley brought up the cultural differences, right? And so when we think about Western medicine, one of the things I think that stands in the way is Western medicine is not built for us, right? It's really built on an individualistic premise, as opposed to collectivism, right? And Black people, brown people, Indigenous people, we are very collective people, right? So it really makes sense that we kind of shy away from things like clinical trials, notwithstanding the lack of trust that comes from things like the Tuskegee experiment and the issues with Henrietta Lacks and all of those things. But also, it's just not done in a collective way, the way that we are built to commune and heal collectively. And I found that even in my work with Health and Human Services and with the breast cancer organization, it was just very different. We needed to have that camaraderie and to speak to each other about our experiences. So, I am also looking at what does it look like to create community around healing, around self-care, around sleep, around sharing our experiences, because that support is so important to us, and is one of the things that keep us going, as Black women. So
Yes. Oh my God, Teray, you shared so many great nuggets, epigenetics and how things are passed down through our DNA and our genes. And we're wondering, oh, that's why grandma did it. And I noticed my mom did it and I do the same thing. And people don't realize that our DNA is actually changed through epigenetics. So these things are passed down through our DNA. You also mentioned stress. Oh my goodness, the role of stress in cancer and other health diseases are huge. So I'm so happy that you really are touching on the topic of stress and cortisol levels. As a licensed professional counselor, I really teach people how to create and maintain their healthy boundaries. And you mentioned self-care, and that's so important for helping to keep the stress levels down. And, also working from a holistic perspective where I focus on mental health, which is our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors, physical health. I'm so happy to hear that you're touching on sleep, because that's something else that I talk about. The average adult needs 7 to 9 hours of sleep. How many hours of sleep did everybody get last night? Just think about that. Look.
yep, I'm with you, Miss Jackie. I only got 5.
5. Yeah, and I didn't, I was sleeping pretty good. And then, my son started sniffling and sneezing. I'm a light sleeper. That woke me up. So then I was up for a couple hours, and then I still went to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, so we're not getting enough sleep. Also working out, our fitness and our exercise levels are very important. I just shared that I went to the gym this morning, and I'm thankful to Inspiring Life Together. They are an organization that serves breast cancer surviving moms like myself. And as a part of their wellness program, because this is what it's all about, guys, wellness, our total well-being, they offer a 3-month gym membership. So they get you started on your track to health. So I'm in my 5th week of that. And then we can't leave out our sense of spirituality in the Black community. You know, that spiritual component is huge. You know, it really is huge, and it really does play a role. And when we're talking about stress, you guys know what I say, spiritual stress is, another name for spiritual stress is spiritual warfare. People don't think of spiritual war, but spiritual warfare is very stressful. When you think about it, think of any challenge you've had or any battle you've been in. It wasn't easy. It was stressful. So thank you so much, Taraya, for sharing. Next up, we have Jackie Scipio Bannerman. Actually, speaking of the gym, you know, Jackie and I met years ago, guys, at the gym. We would get up early in the morning, right, Jackie? And actually, since I joined this gym, I said, see, all these years later, Jackie and I are still doing the same thing, getting up early in the morning and going to the gym. So our physical health is so important. So Jackie and I met at the gym. She is a Penn medicine nurse, certified in ambulatory women's health, and she is a doctoral candidate. And I am actually sitting on Jackie's dissertation committee. I used to be a professor in higher education for 12 years, so I've sat on a few committees, and Jackie asked if I could sit on her committee, and I am. So Jackie, please share with us your experience, your research.
Well, first of all, I'm sitting here listening to Haley, and I feel like a Bob doll. I'm like this. You know, I couldn't help but just keep shaking my head. And then when Taria started talking, I'm like, you know, it's like nothing's new under the sun. Have I heard that before? But at the end of the day, when I was thinking about stressors and whether I'm that slave woman who was watching her son or child be abused, and now watching my son when he goes out, and the concerns and fears that I have that my white cohorts don't have. They don't have that same fear. And I never really sat and thought about that and thinking, wow, that's another stressor for me. That, truth be told, that when I did have the talk with him and I told him he has a mark on his back, he said, but Mom, I haven't done anything. And as the tears are running down my face, I said, unfortunately, you didn't have to. You're a Black man, period, dot. And that hurt my heart. But okay, I'm sorry. That's an aside. First, I'd just like to say I'm humbled by being in the presence of such excellence, you know, and the panelists are just like far above anything I could ever even think I would be in the midst of. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rhodes. Thank you for feeling as though I'm able to sit into the company of these very high esteemed individuals. And even more so, the women who have been diagnosed, the women who are thriving with breast cancer, I take my hat off. I mean, obviously that is huge. All the things that Black women have to deal with, and you have that in addition to weathering Geronimo, the socialist who came up with that idea. It's real talk, you know, and the fact that Black women have to deal with so much and it is affecting us. It's just huge. But I'm sorry, I keep going sideways. But at the end of the day, when I met Dr. Chalice in 2015, I was all HIV. You know, I have given 57 Black women the diagnosis of being positive HIV. I've given it to 3 men, and all of my research was HIV driven, prevent HIV. That was all I was thinking about. And then I went to a barbecue at Dr. Chalice's house, and a woman was there who actually had lost 200 pounds, but she had had such a bad experience at the GYN office that she said she was not going back. I put my rib down. I said, you gotta be kidding me. You have got to go back. You know, this is not something that's an option. You know, you have got to take care of yourself. But she was traumatized by what the provider did, which caused me to then look at healthcare bias. You know, and the fact that what do we do? And I say we, because it's nurses and doctors and phlebotomists and I mean the healthcare profession. What do we do to traumatize obese and overweight women? And what do we do to play into the fact that they don't want to come to get healthcare? It breaks my heart it breaks my heart. But at the end of the day, that's what got me started. So as I started down that path looking at obesity, I was traumatized when I read that Black people had, of all nationality, the highest rates of obesity, and Black women had the highest. What? How is that possible? So somebody looked at, well, number one, Black women had the highest educational attainment in all of the country, all of the United States. So maybe that's going to make a difference in obesity. It did not. Why did it not? Dr. Curry found out that Black women still have all the different jobs and responsibilities. So she doesn't have time to meal prep and go to the gym. So therefore, it's not making a difference, all the education that she has. Oh, great. Okay. Then I read that in 2019, lung cancer is toppled by breast cancer as being the number one breast cancer that's killing Black women. What? How is that possible? How do we have the highest obesity rates, the highest breast cancer rates? And as has already been said, 41% die, more so than white cohorts. I'm like, wow, what can I do regarding prevention? Now, I'm not trying to put down anybody who loves their body in their state. I'm not trying to make anybody, bottom line, obesity, overweight matters. And we can't pretend like it doesn't. We can't pretend like the numbers aren't saying what the numbers are saying regarding our cancer rates and obesity driving those rates. We just can't pretend like it doesn't happen. So in prevention, when I was growing up, now mind you, I might be the oldest person on this call, but at 61, I know growing up, we never used the word cancer. You know, they would say this, you got the C word. You know, I know growing up, we would look at thin people and have a disdain for them because the saying was, nobody likes a bone but a dog. You know, and I remember saying it, you know, but at the end of the day, that's not funny anymore. As I read this research about obesity and cancer, it's not funny. It's not something I want to carry on. It's not something I want to pass on to future generations. You know, it's time is out for that. We've got to educate our young people that being I'm saying a correct weight. I'm not talking about obese, overweight, because as we well know, the BMI numbers are off when it comes to people of color. We're not getting into that conversation. We know healthy and not healthy, period, dot. You know, so at the end of the day, it is our call to make sure our children, their children are a healthy weight, and us being what we call fat, PHAT versus FAT, time is out for that.
Yes.
It's done. You know, we had a time, but it's over. And like I said, that's not to fat shame anybody or to put anybody down for where they are in life and being fine with their in their own skin. That's fine. But we can't forget or can't negate what's happening in the real world. And that's just real talk.
Yes, Jackie. And tell us about your dissertation research title. I know you're still whittling it down some, but it's around these topics, right?
Breast cancer prevention. You know, you don't know what we don't know. Risk factors for breast cancer in Black women. And when they do studies and they ask Black women, you know, what are your risk factors for breast cancer? You know, they might say family history. They might say environmental stuff, but nobody says obesity. You know, that is never said. And that is right up there with the numbers. And just letting people know, sitting down, no longer. You know, sitting is the new smoking. You know, it's killing us. We had to be more active. We've got to start moving. And even though Chalice and I would meet at 5:30 in the morning at the gym, I'm done. The sister got to get some sleep. So I have to change my narrative.
Okay.
You know, I've got to go after work. I always said, if I don't go in the morning, I'm not going. But I have to change that because I need my sleep. I'm going to have to go after work. It sucks, but I got to do it. You know, it's not an option.
But look at how you adjusted. I commend you on adjusting, Jackie, because we all have to find our way. Like me, you can find me working out after, because I'm an early morning person. So I get started early in the morning. And as the day goes on, I start tanking. I can't work out in the evening. But
I hear you. But I'm telling you, I'm up every night writing papers at 12 and 1 o'clock in the morning. I can't keep going. I did it. I did everything. When you saw me, I was doing it. But
I know, Jackie, but it's okay because guess what? This is only for a certain time. Once you finish your degree, you can get back to your early morning schedule. But see, the thing is we have to be willing to be flexible. We have to be willing to be flexible. So I thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing your story. And you started off sharing a story about your son and him being a Black man. I have two sons, Isaiah and Daniel. And here we are with a Black man scientist. His name is Nafis Norris. I am so excited to have Nafis join this panel discussion. He is a biopharmaceutical. Listen, y'all, I had to write this down and read it. He is a biopharmaceutical process engineer and CEO and founder of Nafis Innovations. And I actually met Nafis again at Dr. Nia Bailey's A Letter to My Sister's documentary. And we started talking and he started sharing. And I was saying to him, oh my God, I have two sons and you are such a role model to Black men because they don't see, even we don't see as women, a lot of Black scientists. And then he started explaining what he does. And I was like, oh, I would be so honored if you would join our panel. So Nafis joined our panel. So please share more about yourself, your expertise, and your experience, Nafis.
All right, thank you. I just want to start off with saying thank you to each of the panelists. I'm sitting here taking notes and I don't have enough paper and ink in my pen right about now, so I have to sit my pen down. I can't just walk out the room and look for another pen. But thank you for sharing the information that you guys have said a lot, and a lot has hit home for me. And breast cancer was never a thing that affected me personally until this past July. That's why I felt like it was important for me to come on this panel. And I was excited to be invited. My mother was actually just diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh.
Thankfully, they caught it early on. This was back in July. So she's undergoing treatments, and knowing her, she's looking up all the vegan and herbal ways to treat this thing. And she's like, medicine is our food and things like that nature. So, thank God that she's alive and well, and she's very upbeat. So a bit about myself. I am a biopharmaceutical process engineer. I graduated from Jefferson University. It's actually the only program in the country of its kind, actually in North America, and it's only a concept really taught in Europe. And I found out by accident through a professor of mine that I was the only African-American and first African-American to get in and graduate.
Yes. Woo!
Yeah, thank you. And straight from there, I went straight into GlaxoSmithKline, which was, my first big boy job, first big boy paycheck and everything like that. But, I would say even in the labs, I faced some, early on, I would say I faced some like real challenges and things like that, and not being able to have an opinion, on bigger decisions and how we wanted to do research and development. And that ultimately frustrated me. I was just joking before we started the live, actually, that I was mistaken for the janitor at one point.
Mhm.
And, little did he know I was actually like over him. But he had to check over my work. But I wanted to say that was the reason why, well, one of the many reasons why I wanted to start my own company, which was called Nafis Innovations, right? And someone came to me like, well, why did you name it like Nafis Innovations, right? And you guys talked about mental health, right? So I'll open up a little bit. I used to suffer with depression and anxiety, especially being in this field, right?
Yes.
So it wasn't until I looked up the definition of my name.
Yeah.
I was trying to find a name for the company. I'm like, I just don't know what to name it. And so I looked up my name after a very intimate prayer with God. And I looked up my name and it meant excellence and first class.
Yeah.
That is the type of medicine and what I want to make in the near future, right? So excellent and first class medicine, excellent and first class innovation. So with that being said, a lot of people think that I have my own lab, not yet. So let me clarify that. But how do I start to get there, right?
Yeah.
So the basis of my company is one of the biggest issues in biopharma is, believe it or not, has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with, all these other things that people may come up with. Is literally human error.
Wow.
Right, human error, and that accounts for 46%, right? And a lot of people, and someone came to me and said, well, 46% is not that loud. Well, you shouldn't be in this field giving me that response. One, and two, if someone takes 46% of your check, that's a pretty big chunk. Am I right?
Yes.
So, with that being said, I said, okay, what can I do to like kind of change this? And I noticed a lot of undergrad students did not have the knowledge of what biopharma was. And what I do is actually bioprocessing, which is literally just it's any process such as like CAR T cell therapy, gene and cell therapy, taking living cells and making it into a therapeutic drug, right? Therapeutic medicine. So for that, a lot of people don't understand that process. And again, as I said before, this concept is usually taught in Europe. And if we want to be more specific, in Germany.
Okay.
Right? So I said, okay, why don't I go out to the universities and teach them this concept, right? So now you have something you can add to your repertoire or to your resume, and you can come into industry and know this thing, right? Because with human error comes from lack of knowledge. So if you don't know anything, if you don't know how to do this thing, a lot of undergrad students go right into industry. And I remember talking to someone, actually a hiring manager, and he said, we hire people based off of not what they know, but like, are they teachable?
Yes.
Well, that's great and all, but you know what I mean? Anybody would want anybody teachable, but that's great and all, but why aren't they learning prior to that? Why aren't there any curriculums in the undergrad, studies? So I wanted to address that problem first of the human error. The next problem that I think we all touched a little bit on it was the diversity problem, right? There's not many Black scientists in the lab, and I can for sure you that, right? But with that, if you get more Black scientists in the lab, and I want to clarify, that's one of the things I want to tackle is the diversity initiative.
Yes.
Right. So the first schools that I'm reaching out to is personally is HBCUs, because they do not have this curriculum. So we want to give this curriculum to them. And a part of the curriculum, if I can just back up a little bit, would just be the process, the workflow. One of the classes that was requested was terminology, right? Because you use all these big words and all these things and don't nobody know what you're talking about, right? Especially in meetings. I remember sitting in my first like 3 meetings, I'm like, I'm about to put my 2 weeks in, man. Like, I don't know what y'all talking about. But it just took for me sitting down and just really studying. And I said, how can I explain this to other people without making them feel less than, right? So I built the curriculum based upon that, where it's learnable, where it's easy to digest for the student mind, because you can throw all these terms and these heavy things at them and expect them to learn this in about 15 weeks in a semester. And it's darn near impossible, especially for bioprocessing, right? And then it's important because when you go into these labs, I'm not thinking, oh, I have a job to do. I'm not thinking that. Every time I put on a lab coat, my way of thinking is I'm researching and developing something that's going to save a life.
Yes.
So now at that point, when you think from that mind frame, like the people that are sick, don't nobody care if you got a headache. Don't nobody care if you don't feel like going to work that day, if you feel like taking a vacation. Don't nobody care. People are sick. You know what I mean? People need help. Right. So my whole thing is, okay, let's go in and teach the students that and give them this curriculum. And then also, with that being said, back to the diversity initiative, if you have a more diverse crowd of scientists, you can build more trust in the Black community with medicine, right? Hence, somebody brought it up, I think it was Dr. Rose, as far as like the Tuskegee experiment, right? All Black people lost trust after that experiment. And then on top of that, if you have a diverse, group of scientists, you can have a diverse design of experiments. You can have a diverse way of doing your clinical trials, right? Because in each phase, there are 3 phases in the clinical trials. In each phase of the drug, they ask the same question. 1, is it safe? 2, is it safe? 3, is it safe?
Nice.
Safe for who? Right? Like, what demographic are we talking about? Is it safe for, just Caucasian? Is it safe for, Asian? And a lot of people, especially if we're talking about such a delicate and personalized medicine like gene and cell therapy, right? Like you have to actually study the genome of African American people, right?
Yeah.
And who cares about the African American genome other than us, right?
Mhm.
So, I think if we have, more diversity, we have more diverse medicine that will work for all. So that's the basis of my company and what we want to provide.
Oh my God, Nafis, thank you so much for sharing. Listen, we are praying for your mom and her breast cancer survivorship, journey. We're praying that, God heals her and that she is made whole, you know. And I just thank you so much for just sharing about, how the diversity and equity inclusion aspect of clinical research trials that's needed. I do diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting in my practice. So it's so good to hear in this science field how you're using your company to also bring attention to that aspect, because you're right. And, in the research studies that I read, like Haley shared, Black breast cancer is different. It's different and it needs to be studied. So thank you so much, Nafis, for sharing. And listen, we have Morgan Mitchell next. Now, listen, this is my fellow pink sister survivor, but Nafis, she joined you. She's a scientist too. So we're going to let her share her story. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my God, this is amazing. These are the exact type of conversations we need to be having amongst Black people, Black women. And I'm just so thankful for this opportunity to be here with you guys. I truly am humbly honored to be here. And I'll just say, yeah, my story is a little bit crazy, right? It could be like 5 different movies. So I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
But I've loved science since I was in 3rd grade. I'm just a natural scientist. So I eventually ended up getting my PhD in biochemistry.
Wow.
Here in Houston, Texas, at the University of Texas. I have my bachelor's in chemistry from Spelman College. So Nafis, HBCU, that's me. I love that. I have a passion for getting Black and brown girls into STEM. And not only that, making them understand the non-traditional paths that they can take to a scientific career. I grew up in a generation where my parents, they noticed that I love science. So they're like, you're going to be a doctor, right? Because you're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, or a teacher, right? And so I was on track to go to medical school. But when I started doing research, I just fell in love with research and realized that this is for me. And I have a feeling that a lot of, my Black sisters, Black families have the same thing, and now there's so many things that you can do if you love science or if you want to be a scientist. You don't have to be a medical doctor. And so I'm super passionate about this. So I actually got my PhD in August 2020, and I got a breast cancer diagnosis the same month. So it was extreme pain, extreme joy, and extreme pain. You can imagine. This was also in the middle of COVID, before vaccines. Okay. So people were dying in the streets. The news was crazy, body bags everywhere. It was really, really hard. I had to not only have physical strength, but mental strength, which was so hard, super, super hard. So glad that I'm on the other side. I don't have breast cancer doesn't run in my family. I was 34 years old at the time. So that means that I was too young for everything. I'm too young for mammograms. I'm too young for self-exams. And it doesn't run in my family. So according to the guidelines, I don't even begin to start doing mammograms and stuff like that, self-exams, until I'm age 40. I was diagnosed at 34. If I had waited until I was 40, I probably would not be here right now.
Right.
As many of you have said, Black breast cancer is different, and that's because it is, right? These are not hallucinations. this is scientific evidence, and it just pains me to see so many of my sisters dying. You know, this is my community. I'm from, you know, low end Black, you know, lesser than community, right? And it affects us, right? And, you know, we just talk about, you know, nutrition and just so many things. If you travel around the corner from my house, there's every single fast food restaurant that you have ever known is on that street. If I want a healthy meal, that means I have to get on the freeway and travel at least 15 minutes.
Wow.
This is problematic, right? This is problematic because we don't have the resources to do this. To be honest, I mean, you know, I have a car, and it's even hard for me because it's just too far. I'm tired. You mentioned, you know, we're working long hours as Black women and Black people often do, and I'm tired. And when I'm tired, I'm just grabbing the quickest thing just so that I can feel fulfilled. But that's problematic, that the quickest thing is not healthy. The quickest thing is not, you know, the health value is not there. We don't even, amongst all these fast food restaurants, we don't even have a Chipotle, you know? And so these things have got to change. And I just resonate so much with all of the nuggets shared here. You know, you mentioned lack of rest, lack of sleep. My mom, she's of that generation. She's like, if you're sleeping, that means you're not doing something. That means you're not gaining something. It's very hard for her to sit still. If I tell her I'm sick and I'm just tired, that's not acceptable. She will most likely clap back and be like, tired of what? You haven't done nothing, right? And so and so y'all know what I'm talking about. Black moms, they're all the same, right? So, but we've got to get away from this, you know, of this narrative that if you're not doing some sort of work, then you're not doing what you're supposed to be, or you're being lazy. That's crazy. You know, we need rest. Your body needs rest. You need time to heal, recoup. And it's not 5 hours of sleep. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's not 5 hours of sleep. That's not enough. That's not gonna work. Right. Yes. And so this is problematic. And we've got to do better about this. It's not one person's fault. It's factors coming in from everywhere, right? Generational curses. When I first learned of my diagnosis, I'm a very public person, and I put it on social media. My mom's not happy at all.
Right.
She was embarrassed. She was like, Morgan, stop telling all your personal business to everybody. They don't need to know this, and that's problematic because they do need to know this. We do need to talk about this. This, you know, this whole sense of, you know, keeping everything within the home. Again, she grew up in that generation. You don't talk about illness outside of the house. You don't talk about a death outside of the house. You don't ask what a person passed from. That's seen as rude and disrespectful. No, we need to know what Uncle Bobby passed from. We need to know this, right? We need to start having these conversations because we are literally killing ourselves, and no one is going to swoop in and save us. It's up to us to save us. Yeah. So I have no breath in me. I will make sure that every young African-American woman understands their risk for breast cancer until I die. This is part of my purpose. This is part of my God-given purpose. And again, no one's going to save us. It's up to us. It's up to me. And so I take on that challenge head front. So thank you so much for having me. Nafis, I need a job. So I'm going to be reaching out to you.
I got
Right,
you. I
networking.
got you.
I love
Thank you
it.
so much for having me.
Oh, I am so delighted to have you and to have met you and for you to join the panel. I'm so thankful for everything you shared. It just goes right along with what everybody was talking about, from Jackie with obesity to you talking about lack of nutritious foods and options in the neighborhood, to Terea talking about lack of sleep, to Nafis talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and both of your interest in the HBCU community, and Haley with her, talks about, the disparities with the clinical research trials. Well, we have another pink sister survivor who is on the call. Her name is Bola. And Bola, I'm hoping that you can unmute your mic. And if you could turn your camera on, we would love to see your beautiful face and hear you talk. Hi, Bola. How are you?
Hi, everybody. So sorry. I'm just going to talk really quickly. Thank you so much for having me here.
Yes.
So
Bola,
Morgan.
Bola, listen, we see you over there multitasking.
Yes.
This is what we're talking about. This is what Black women are doing. 7:50
Absolutely.
at night. Bola's
Yep.
shopping for her family, planning and preparing for the next meal.
Yes.
And she probably worked all day today.
I did. And so what I've learned is, I'm just going to say, like, traditionally, I'm kind of type A personality. So this whole breast cancer trajectory was not into my 5-year plan or 10-year plan, 15-year plan. But I did have the extensive history of cancer, other types of cancer, prior to being diagnosed in 2021. So from my grandparents to my older sister with other types of cancer. So I started my screening in my 30s. So, I'm like, hey, I'm going to do my ultrasound. I have dense breasts. That was not a big deal. I have fibrocystic disease. And I used to work as an oncology nurse. So I'm like, I got this, right? So here comes 2021. I get my routine screening as I had done in years prior. And the radiologist calls me back 2 days later to say, Bola, it looks like DCIS. I'm like, what? I used it. I always tell everybody, my defense mechanism immediately was denial. I was like, there's no way. Did I screw up on somebody's chemo?
Yeah.
It was crazy. I was trying to rationalize. But anyway, ended up getting a second opinion. And so I went from a male Caucasian telling me, yes, it's hormone positive. You just got to take the hormone therapy for the next 5 to 10 years. You'll get over it. You're a big woman. It's not a big deal. It's automatic menopause. Wow. And so I sought a second opinion. And as cynical as I was like crying out to God, like, what is this, God? I don't understand what this is, right?
Yeah.
But he just kept reassuring me, this is God giving me peace. I was like, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. All the other kinds of cancer, I thought I was prepared for. Most definitely not breast cancer, right? So then I ended up looking for another hospital system and getting a female doctor. Now, initially, I had asked God, I said, God, please just send me a female doctor. I didn't care if she was white, black, yellow.
Yes.
Like, just send me a female doctor. But would you know what God did? Every single member of my care team is women of color. They're all Black. I never asked for that. All I asked God for was just give me a woman who understands menopause.
Yes.
Yes. So here I am. What is it? 2 years later, I ended up going through the surgery with the double mastectomy, primarily because of the family history. And my older sister was in remission at that point from endometrial cancer.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, we're all in our 40s.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get this. I'm not ready for a hysterectomy. Let's just do the next best thing, which is what I did with the surgery. And then, of course, when the surgical pathology came back, It was already in my lymph node on the left side.
Oh no.
I did not feel anything. I had nothing other than fibrocystic breast disease and dense breast. That's it.
Yes.
So anyway, ended up getting radiation for 5 weeks
Okay.
while I was getting the hormone therapy, of course. So bottom line, I was trying to, again, being kind of type A by default, rationalize, think through, like, well, why was that initial doctor trying to deliver whatever message he was trying to deliver initially? So I had to get out of that blame game to say, nah, he's just crazy, or to say, oh, maybe I didn't do this, maybe I didn't do that, or maybe I shoulda, woulda, whatever. It didn't serve me. So I learned to say, you know what, God, you already got me regardless. You are walking through with me, even though it didn't make any sense. I'm not even going to try to make any sense out of it. Of course, my genetic testing was negative.
Thank God.
So thank God. And it was more like incidental finding, even though I didn't have any symptoms at all. So a lot of my team, I meet with them about every 3-4 months.
Yes.
And they're like, well, Bola, we've taken your case to tumor board. We don't know what. I'm like, you're not going to know. Leave it to God to figure out. It's okay.
Yes.
So, yeah. So bottom line, I just want to say, I want to encourage all my pink sisters out there. Again, I had said earlier, yes, I am type A. I like to plan. I did not ever plan on going on social media. I historically have not been a public person, but lo and behold, through this journey, I started my own podcast.
Yes.
And I'm on social media just to preach the message and to share my testimony, to say, you know what, you guys might be type A, but God's got you already. Just leave it in his hands and he will walk through the passage with you. So, yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing. If you could put in the chat the name of your podcast and where
people
can access
absolutely
episodes, others too, if you want to share your social media handles in the chat so that we can all connect. Bola, you mentioned having dense breasts, and last week I had a panel on breast cancer health disparities. And my doc, the booby doc, Dr. Ross, radiologist doctor, she shared about how African American women, Black women, 50% of us have dense breasts.
Yes.
And dense breast is actually a risk factor for breast cancer.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Dense breast, but they never said that it was a risk
factor.
They never did. Cancer. They never told you that either, right?
Now, they never did.
Yes. And Dr. Roth explained that dense breast, so cancer cells go up as white images on a mammogram.
Yes.
Well, so do dense breast.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of cancers are missed.
Yeah.
Sometimes hard to tell what's like, in 2017, I was told that I had a cyst on my right breast.
Yeah.
But that's actually turned out to be DCIS or sterile breast cancer. So I always say I'm so grateful to God that he kept that cancer contained in my milk duct for those 5 years.
Absolutely.
But I think it's very important to educate our community. If you are told that you have dense breast, you have to speak up and advocate for yourself. Well, if you're not already getting a 3D mammogram, you want to ask for a 3D mammogram and you want to ask for an ultrasound or an MRI for breast.
Yes.
To make sure. So 50% of Black women have dense breast. And when a doctor tells you that, we can't just continue living our best life like we did, because that's actually a risk factor for breast cancer. So Bola, thank you so much for sharing. I see Morgan, you have your hand up. And if anybody has any questions, please type it in chat or raise your hand and you can ask any of the panelists. Morgan.
Yeah, thank you so much for recognizing these factors that go into everything. I think it's really important to highlight and emphasize the factor of prostate cancer which occurs in men in terms of our family history, right? It's so crazy. I'm a scientist, and I've just learned so much. Now that I've been diagnosed, that I never knew before. Nobody ever told me this. I never read any of this or anything. And it's crazy. And I tell people all the time, if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And we've got to do better about disseminating this information in our community. But again, I want to highlight the importance of prostate cancer, because when you think about breast cancer, I'm myself included, I'm looking at my mom's side of the family, right? Women have breasts, right? I'm looking at the women in my family, right? And just totally forgetting the fact that, men, they get prostate cancer and they don't necessarily get breast cancer, but they pass off these genes to their daughters, right? And that's super, super, super important. Beyonce, if you look at her dad has a genetic mutation that caused prostate cancer. And so that means that she has a 50% chance of getting breast cancer, right?
Right.
So we've got to utilize these platforms and really understand like how much this is killing us. It's killing us. It's killing us. And, again, we're dying at higher rates. We're getting, more diagnosis of breast cancer. We're getting aggressive breast cancers, right? We're getting triple negative, the type that doesn't do well with any type of other medication, right? It's aggressive, it's rapidly growing. And so, we have to have more conversations like this. We have to have more conversations around family history and prostate cancer. Let's not only look at breast cancer in terms of our mom's side of the family, let's look at our dad's side of the family. Let's look at the males in our family and see, their incidence of cancer and how much that falls on us and how much that's going to influence us. So I think that's something that, we definitely need to be talking about.
And see, Morgan, I'm so glad you bring up that point, because my dad actually was a prostate cancer survivor. I'm so glad that because I talk about this all the time. As Black people, we need to share our family history. So we can't control anyone else but ourselves. So what we can do is we can ask the elders, what is our family history? Does cancer run in our family? High blood pressure, diabetes? But then
right.
Y'all need to pass down the information to us, because we are dying at alarmingly high rates. I didn't find out until after I was diagnosed with breast cancer that breast cancer actually does run on my dad's side of the family. My grandmother, 2 of her sisters had breast cancer, and my grandfather's sister had breast cancer. So trust me, if I had known that information when they said to me in 2017, oh, this is just a cyst on your right breast, we'll just keep an eye, I would not have continued living my best life now, y'all. I would have definitely said, breast cancer runs in my family. Can we do something about that? And then listening to Bola speak, I love that Bola actually knew her breast cancer history. She knew the cancer that ran in her family, and I guess maybe in part, Bola, that's because the generations were alive. In my situation, the generations, these were my cancer literally, well, I can't say that. Breast cancer literally skipped a generation and landed on me. But I can't say cancer skipped a generation, because my father was actually a prostate cancer survivor. So thank you, Morgan, for highlighting the importance of sharing our family history. And Haley, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, really just jumping in the same conversation here. So we have I'm putting our website in the chat, loveofmygirls.org. This is our campaign for young Black women and Black breast health. And the 3 prongs of this campaign are: 1, understand that Black breast health is real; 2, unlocking her story, what we're talking about; and then 3, getting to know how and when to check your girls monthly and build that into your routine. But back to the her story part, we have my background is actually in education. I was an elementary school teacher for 8 years, so I love me a good worksheet. Yeah. So we created a worksheet, had it approved by our medical advisory board, and it actually goes through breast cancer, prostate, hypertension, diabetes, things that are common to Black families. It asks you for both your mom's side, your dad's side,
Wow.
the age at which your family members got these diseases. And it's just like a really fun, easy worksheet again, because as we talked about, these things are sometimes taboo in certain families. You can go ask your grandma this and she could think you were being rude, you know,
Right.
like that's the reality of this. And so in the honor of this campaign being fun and light and being health focused, we created this worksheet so that we can make that conversation a little bit less taboo
Good.
and more inviting. I know my mom personally like makes everyone, call out their most recent numbers at Thanksgiving at a time when, but it's super important to have a family history and her story, we call it here. But also two more things that you commented on, Morgan, that I want to add to. One being, knowing my family, her story is the only way I can advocate for the screening that I need, because I don't have any genetic predispositions in my family. Yet I have a family history of a great aunt, grandmother, and mother. Now let's talk about that, right? Because there's a lot to be said here that we test for the 88 genes that we know of, right? I have a doctor right now working in Africa that's already found a gene called the Duffy gene, that is related to triple negative in Black women, right? And so we're not testing for that here yet. And so my family could have a gene, but we don't know, and we don't know all these things yet. So the only way as a 31-year-old that I can advocate to a doctor and to my insurance company to pay for these screenings that I need, I have to know my family history.
Yes.
Right. And so that's how imperative this is. And then the other thing I want to talk about too, back to that screening place, is yes, if you go read the fine print on the screening guidelines, and we're happy they changed from 50 to 40. Great move, not enough, right? And so I think, but even those things, they say if you're of average risk, right? That's what those guidelines say in the fine print. And again, we talked about dense breast, family history. Like, so many of us aren't of average risk. And so we need to know our risk earlier, act on these things earlier, and then be able to advocate for ourselves in a meaningful way. And so please go to our website, check out this worksheet. It's really, really easy. If you've been to any of our events, I throw them in every bag because they're really easy. And again, back to that quickly dense breast piece is around, you don't even know if you have dense breasts until you go get a mammogram. Yeah. And so if you go at 40, then it's already, then you're just finding out your breasts are dense. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, what is that information doing? It's probably good to know now, but it could have been good to know later. I mean, earlier, like 10 years ago, I would have known what my screening regimen should be, and my sister and I are now on a screening regimen where we do, and because our chance in our family history is 34%. So we do an MRI every 6 months, a 3D mammogram every 6 months. So we're getting screened every 6 months in some capacity. That's what we've been recommending. And I'm getting married next weekend, and I'm bringing breast cancer screening to my wedding because I'm getting all my cousins screened next weekend at my wedding.
Oh my God. Wait, congratulations on your upcoming wedding, Haley.
But I was like, why not? When my family's all in one place, why not take this opportunity to do this, and make it really, really, why not? So we're doing it.
But listen, that is so thoughtful of you, because it's your wedding day and here you are still working in the breast cancer space, Haley. That is so amazing.
Yeah, gotta do it. And it's easy, it's like, why not? It's like these things, like I was actually thinking I might do more weddings. I might make this a thing. I'm sure the Black weddings and do screenings. This would be a great idea.
I know. Oh my God, thank you so much for sharing, Haley, and that worksheet. Oh my God, it's so important. So we can head on over to the Touch Black Breast Cancer Alliance website to download that worksheet, shared with others. And so we have Toraya with her hand raised. Oh, Toraya.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. One of the things that Haley mentioned was, high blood pressure, right? And that comes up a lot in discussions about Black health. But I think what we don't often do is make that connection between high blood pressure and hormones in women. So we automatically assume high blood pressure, high salt intake, high fat intake, whatever. But there are some studies that are showing that there is a connection between having high blood pressure and hormone imbalances. And so I think it's really important that, we look at the whole picture and not just think that these are just, oh, because I'm Black, I have this higher, propensity to get this thing. There can be connections to other things, and don't be afraid to push your doctor, even when they're saying, oh, no, it's nothing, your body. And the other thing that I want to kind of bring up is sometimes we tend to think about ourselves as having a high threshold for pain, or, this is not a huge bother, I don't need to worry about this now. I've got so many things to do. Drop everything and prioritize your health. Even if it's that small thing that just feels off to you, drop everything and prioritize, make that doctor's appointment, because you never know. You really never know. And again, just with the hormone piece, so many of us have fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, and we're not looking at that as, hey, these are also risk factors. These also can be connected to different hormone levels that can impact our health in a major, major way. So I just want to encourage people, if something feels off to you, even if you feel like it's small, just get it checked out and push until you get what you need.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Teray. And we are going to take our final comment from Morgan. All right, Morgan.
Yeah, just briefly, I just want to, I have to say this, so many times in the Black family and Black community, my mom, my mom's mom, my grandmother on my mom's side, was a nurse. And my mom commented, she was like, we never went to the doctor. We never went to the doctor. We never went to the hospital. Whatever we had, my mom, made a home remedy, and that's good. And then it's not good, right? We have to be honest in this, right? You need to go to the doctor. You need to have your annual exams. You need to have your woman wellness exams. And we've got to stay on top of this. And so, yeah, I just want to point that out, that, we come from a background of this, okay, well, you're sick, so we're going to make you a good meal and then you're going to feel better, right? And while we mean well, it doesn't always end in the best results, right? And so it's sort of a shifting of our cultural beliefs, and our familiar beliefs. We're dying, and that's point blank what it is. We're dying, and so we need people who are trained in this and who have done this, forever, who have our best interests at heart. We've got to do better with this. So
Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Morgan. Nafis, Haley, Jackie, Terea, Bola, you all have been so awesome. You have created such an awesome discussion on clinical research trials. We're live on YouTube now, but this will be made available on my YouTube channel. So even if people weren't able to attend, you can go back and listen to this discussion and get all of the great information that was provided here. I just want to thank everyone for sharing their time. I know we all work so hard today, but we're doing great work in our community. Let's keep it going. And thank you all so much for attending. I wish everybody a great night and get some sleep tonight, guys. Bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
thank you so much, you all. This was really, really powerful. We need to keep having this and keep having this and keep having this.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chalice.
Thank you.